And welcome to tonight's edition of the One Hood Power Hour. I am your co-host, Kahari Mosley, here with Miracle Jones, and we have another great episode tonight. We will be talking to the two Democratic nominees who are running to replace Ed Gainey and Jake Wheatley, respectively, in the Pennsylvania State House, and that is Aerion Abney and Martell Covington. But before we get to our esteemed guests, there's always so much to talk about. We are really in earnest beginning the political season. Candidates who are also running in the primaries are circulating petitions. So the season has truly begun with the state Supreme Court's decision to begin a congressional candidate petition circulation that is happening here and all over the state, as well as the candidates running for statewide office. But Miracle, what else is going on in the world of politics that is of note?
So you may not have been aware, but over the weekend there was a little bit of a dust up. There was a recent announcement by the Allegheny County Police to say that they were going to start this community outreach program, and the community outreach program entailed them going up to parked cars, looking in parked cars, testing doors, windows, under the guise of trying to let people know that their cars could be marks for thieves. We were one of the organizations that basically raised an alarm about some of the issues, particularly around search and seizures, what this meant for people who are just trying to come in and enjoy the parks. And within 24 hours, the Allegheny County Police have said that they're not going to implement that program as of yet. Again, they pulled it back. So we are hopeful that they're going to take some of the community concerns under consideration. But they were saying that they were going to literally give you a report card, put a report card on your windshield. Some of the issues people were worried about was whether or not this was actually going to create a situation where people are going to then be targeted because of these report cards being placed on the windshield. What would happen if the officers mistakenly thought they saw contraband or something illegal in a car? And again, there were some issues around whether or not people's registrations would be scanned. Again, City Council has passed legislation that basically said low-level traffic citations are no longer going to be enforced just as a means of pretextual stops. And one of those was being people's registrations had a little of a grace period to get brought up into alignment. And so there were some concerns with that. So we're very happy that the Allegheny County Police have, said that they're going to hold off on implementing this program. But this is one of the things that was happening locally over the weekend. Back to you, Kari.
Thank you for that, Miracle. And as I said earlier, we are, truly, in the first quarter of the political season, and we are being bombarded, with a ton of television ads. We had talked, recently about how Pennsylvania has received, more ads than any other corner of the state so far. And I thought it was a really interesting article talking about one of the more interesting primary elections probably in the country, which is the Democratic primary for United States Senate. And the Philadelphia Inquirer had a very interesting story, really looking at the differences between the three candidates running, and that would be Congressman Connor Lamb, Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman, as well as State Representative Malcolm Kenyatta. So it's a great piece. We're going to drop it in the chat as well. And, we're definitely going to be watching that race very closely of two very well known candidates from western part of the state and a rising star from the eastern part of the state. It very much looks to be, one of the more interesting candidates as far as the strength of the field, as well as the kind of various paths these three candidates have taken to the Senate race. So that's one thing that we all really should be paying attention to, as well as the many, many candidates on the Republican side. I don't know what the number has gotten up to now, but I do know it is a large, large field of candidates on the Republican side as well. And we will take some time to examine them as well as we get closer to the May 17th primary. So, anything else in the world of politics that we should know about before we get to our esteemed guest tonight?
Yes, like you said, politics season is here. Again, we're still waiting on the legislative maps. But for those of you who are interested in what this means for our election protection, what are some of the election planning that's going on, have no fear, because tomorrow at 2 o'clock, the Allegheny County Board of Elections is having a meeting. Downtown to talk about the special election that's coming up on April 5th. But for those of you who want to know like what's happening, are there going to be drop boxes? Are there going to be early registration sites? Are there going to be additional measures to engage this election season? These are some of the things that will be in front of the Board of Elections tomorrow at 2 a.m. So you can go and you can engage and you can talk to the Board of Elections, give public comments. There's not a guarantee that we'll get all the answers tomorrow, but this is also a moment for you as a citizenry to engage with the Board of Elections. In addition, yesterday, for those of you who are able to catch it, we had a special edition of the Sunday night sit down. Usually, we're talking to politicians, getting to know them. But tomorrow, there is a deadline because the Supreme Court is hearing proposals about changing the rules of criminal procedure. And some of these would be beneficial. So it will allow people to have gag one hearings. They're not languishing in the county cities and county jails waiting to hear if they violated probation. It would also allow for arrest by summons in Philadelphia so that people do not have to be arrested. The default would not be an arrest. But there are also some other issues, such as allowing bail to be revoked for the sanctity of the courts, and creating opportunities to keep people incarcerated who are at risk for self-harm. So people living with addictive disorders, drug use disorders, or mental health disorders are now going to be subjected to having their bail revoked, quote unquote, for their own health and safety, even though we know jails and prisons are places where mental health issues are exacerbated. So again, we're asking people to reach out, to send a letter of support to the Supreme Court Rules Committee, and we'll put that information in the chat as well, so that you're able to engage the committee. And so I know that we have an election coming up. Everyone's like super stoked about this election. So I'll turn it over to Kahari to talk about our guest and why we're here today.
Absolutely, yeah, we're very excited to invite. And before actually I go to our guest, I do also, as always, want to give a shout out to our ASL interpreters and our ASL interpreter Kat. Thank you so much for providing your very needed and a very important service to the community. And we couldn't do what we do without the support of our ASL interpreters. So as we enter once again another very, very unusual political season, as we continue, to face challenges, with the pandemic. We had a huge potential transformation of leadership here locally with Ed Gainey and Jake Wheatley ascending to the mayor's office, obviously with Mayor Gainey taking position of mayor and Jake Wheatley resigning his position with the state house to become chief of staff to the mayor, created, a huge vacuum of leadership in the community, and based upon Democratic Party elections that happened, over the last month, these two gentlemen who will join us tonight will be the nominees of the Democratic Party for special elections that were triggered by the vacancies created by Ed Gainey and Jake Wheatley leaving to work at City Hall. And these two gentlemen are Aerion Abney, who's the Democratic nominee in the 19th legislative district, the seat formerly held by Jake Wheatley, and we have Martell Covington, the Democratic nominee for State House in the 24th district, the seat that was vacated by now Mayor Ed Gainey. Welcome to the Power Hour.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. We appreciate being here.
Yeah, it's great to have you back on. I'm going to give my colleague Miracle the honor to ask the first question tonight, but thank you so much for coming on. I know it's a very busy time.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kahari. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us this evening. We know that, like you said, this is a busy time. You're still out meeting people, going door to door. My first question is for you, Martell, then you, Aerion. What are some of the things that you are working on right now in this transition period to help you get ready to represent the people of your district?
Well, that's a great question. So actually, there's a lot of things that we're doing. We're in a very unique position with having to run in a special election and then turn around and run in a primary. And in the middle of that, get acclimated to Harrisburg, to colleagues, to house rules, to how things are happening. So right now, trying to prepare for what an office would look like and how we could implement constituent services is definitely one thing. But then also, while you say like we're knocking doors, while we're talking to constituents, whether they be in a current or the new district, what are concerns, what are like the nuanced on the ground concerns that people in our district have. And I think that's one thing that, I can say that I've been doing. I know, Aerion has as well, is, the landscape is going to look a little bit different on both of our maps, so that may bring in some different issues that weren't on our radar before. So this is just a big learning period for me. I spent a lot of the day just trying to read and things and catch up on things, and just really try to be a student right now because there's a lot happening, and I just want to be able to learn everything I can.
Yeah, I'll just add on to it. Very similar to what Martell was saying. Everything is moving at a really quick speed ever since the nomination process happened. Essentially, we are planning for the special election while at the same time planning for the primary. And most folks, when they are running for one of these seats, they're running in the primary. And if they win the primary, it's almost guaranteed that they'll win in the general. So they have, sometimes, 6-7 months to prepare that transition, to get their staff together, to identify where they want to put their office. And so our window of time is very short. After the April 5th election, we're being told that within 2 weeks after that, we might get sworn in and it's time to hit the ground running, time to work. Right. But I think the benefit of us, campaigning is that we've, as Martell said, we've been speaking to residents, we've been speaking to voters, we've been speaking to people about what they care about and the issue. So hopefully that transition won't be as tough. But we are, just taking it day by day and trying to adjust to everything as it comes.
Thank you for that. Now we can start with Aerion and back to Martell, and thanks once again to our ASL interpreters. Just want to give a shout out to Cameron as well, who's joining us tonight. Thank you so much. So my first question was along the lines of what Miracle asked, but I'm really curious to know, like, how are you balancing, these two kind of dynamics that are working against each other? One dynamic which has both of you, in a position, where, barring some very, unforeseen circumstances, you will be elected on April 5th, And then, as Aerion said, there will be a orientation process, a swearing in process. And then within a month of that, or somewhere around roughly a month, you will be back on the ballot, asking the voters, to keep you. So, how do you plan on balancing, the need, to get to work immediately, while also, try to, continue, the hard work of actually, campaigning, and earning votes as well.
Yeah, so I would say, it's definitely a grind, but I kind of knew what I was getting into before we, decided to get into the race. We knew the timeline was going to be very tight, so it's not beyond the realm of my expectations going into it. So, but I would also say I have a really good team around me. I always tell folks there's no such thing as a one-person army. While I may be the face of the campaign and people see me as the person running for office and then to be the elected official, it really says a lot to have folks around you and the infrastructure around you that can help you, make sure that your calendar is right. You're not double booking yourself, or that you're supposed to be at, you're at the right events, or that you're doing call time and fundraising. So it's a lot. It's not for the faint of heart. Like campaigning in itself can be a very draining, emotionally, physically, mentally, experience. But for me, because I've been through this before in terms of the gauntlet of running a campaign, I also had in my mind what the timeline was going to look like this time around, and I have a really good team around me that it just makes life a little bit easier than it would be if I was, all by myself.
And I have to say the same thing that Aerion said. I am grateful to have a team that allows us to kind of have some balance, and kind of prepare for things and take things as they come. I have to express gratitude, to the people that are part of Team Tell, because they're helping make this happen. One thing that I want to go back to, you said, Kahari, is basically how we can kind of go from being a legislator to campaigning again. One thing that I know we're doing now is we're trying to make sure that we're gaining ground in the new part of the map as well. We don't want to wait for May to hit and then we're just trying to get into new parts of the 24. We want to prepare now. We want to make sure that we're present now. We're talking to committee people. We're learning about events, and things that are happening in these spaces, so that we can plug in, in late April, early May, and kind of already have an understanding of, what's happening in these areas. So that's one thing, that we're doing right now, tactfully, to kind of prepare. But then also, I think for me and Aerion, the things that we've done previously allow us to be able to kind of stand on that, just the relationships that we have in community, and, just building relationships with stakeholders and things like that. Like all those things are kind of able to come into play now in the current map and the new map. And, I think we both kind of have to just lean on that. And also, like, ask for help. I think one thing about this whole process is, like, I've had to learn to trust people and to ask for help. Kind of like a vulnerability thing. And a lot of times you don't hear candidates talk about vulnerability, but it's real. Like, help is needed. Like, you have to be able to kind of rely on some people to give you information or give you direction or give you support. And I think that's kind of what has us in a position to be able to make this happen, is just really just trusting people that are part of the team and part of the process.
Thank you. So I did have a question, because you're talking about this being very unprecedented because you're going to have to run again. So what does the transition look like for you all with the people who are currently working at the legislative offices? Are you able to engage people, or is it going to be a situation where you get elected, you bring in new people, but then you have to turn around and campaign? So, like, what is that transition and learning curve going to look like in actuality? To you, Aerion, and then you to Martell.
Yeah, so I'm not sure about what happens necessarily with the staff. I think in my district, technically, where former Representative Jake Wheatley's office is, once January comes, it won't technically physically be in the district again. So that kind of like, puts a lot of things up in the air, as well as, trying to figure out what does staff look like. We're getting a lot of things from Harrisburg saying, okay, well, you can have this many staff, but if you want to have more staff, then you can have part-time staff versus full-time staff. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of things we have to consider, because I think the part-time staff may not get full health benefits, right? So for me, I got to think about how does that play into being able to retain staff over a long period of time if you're paying somebody part-time but they're not actually getting health benefits, right? So it goes back to the point earlier, but what I'm saying is, as somebody running in a campaign, it's good to have a good team around you. But even once you get elected, like, you need to have a good team around you, people who can have that continuity and that sustainability. Because at the end of the day, 9 times out of 10, the elected official is not really doing the direct service, like the constituent services. It's really your staff people. So you really want to make sure you have good quality people, and you're taking care of them, and they feel like they're a part of the team, so they can provide good services. And so it's, I think it's going to be trial by fire. There's a few people in the current legislature in Allegheny County who have done special elections, but not this quick of a turnaround between their special election and actual primary. So I think, again, we're in a very unique situation, and we kind of just have to, to figure it out. I mean, that's just the reality of it.
Yeah, and recently I noticed there was a photo that was circulated on social media that local state representative Dan Miller, posted that y'all spent some time together. Can you talk a little bit about what kind of conversations happen? And for those who don't know, Dan Miller, is a leader in the Allegheny County delegation in the Pennsylvania State House, represents the Mount Lebanon area of the South Hills. And I understand that, local kind of delegation leaders become kind of like a guide, as you go through the process. So what, are those, conversations like, working with someone whose role is to help get you oriented to Harrisburg?
Yeah, it's I'm definitely glad to have been able to have conversations with Rep Miller, and also Representative Austin Davis, and a lot of other reps in the area to kind of give you some guidance, or some advice as somebody that's kind of coming into this space. So the conversations with Rep Miller are kind of like having us understand that you're hitting the ground running. That your orientation is not going to be the same window as it has been for other people, that you're going to have to be able to juggle multiple things, whether it's hiring in a district and in a capital, because there's also an office in the capital as well. So, having to make sure that we understand that we have to do some hiring. And then also in a district, for me, it's interesting where I'm fortunate that I was able to build relationships with Mayor Gainey's staff and work hand in hand because, Senator Costa's senatorial district encompasses a good bit of Mayor Gainey's House district. So I've been able to kind of work with Mayor Gainey's office for the past couple of years and been able to understand some of the nuanced issues. But then on the flip side, a lot of Mayor Gainey's staff has went downtown, so it's really kind of understanding what's happening, but then we got to bring a new team in and kind of catch them up to speed as far as how things go. And then also it's an interesting time, with things happening where there are going to be people that are going to need supports with rent rebates or, some tax prep things. So it's definitely a unique time as far as focusing on constituent services, because we're going to have to support some constituents through the spring and summer just because of the calendar of things that happen at the state. So, just really getting us prepared. Rep Miller, he kind of gives you like the coach vibe sometimes, right? Like the hoop coach that you had for the Boys and Girls Club, like, so sometimes he's like, all right, you're doing good. This is perfect. And other times he's like, nope, you got to hit this harder. You got to make sure you're doing this, and this. So I can appreciate the balance where it's like understanding that this is unprecedented, but there's still going to have to be some urgency with certain things. So I can appreciate him seeing how unique this time is and being able to kind of give us a little bit of both,
And so I do have a question. You are both running to replace people who kind of been entrenched in the community prior to taking office. Are there any political differences that you have with the people who are that were in those offices? If so, what are they, and how do you set about? How are you planning to set about to distinguish yourselves from your predecessors, you Aerion, then you Martell?
Yeah, I would just say that I think there's probably more commonalities than there are differences in terms of, in the bigger picture, just trying to do right by your constituents, and the people that you're representing. And for me, I'm trying to really go into this with sort of my eyes open and my ears open, and just have a willingness to listen and to learn and to talk to folks. And the way I see my position is being able to translate what they're saying they need up into Harrisburg, and figuring out how do I identify where the resources are, whether that is trying to pass legislation, or if that is trying to identify where there are grant opportunities or things of that nature, to address those specific needs that folks have in the communities. And so, I don't look at it in terms of me trying to do anything to be better than somebody necessarily before me. I don't see it really as a competition. I leave that for other people to decide. At the end of the day, that's not for me. At the end of the day, I'm just focused on what can I do to be the best representative that I can be for the people that I'm looking to serve.
And I'll definitely agree with Ariana about having a lot of the similarities and commonalities. I mean, the biggest difference, of course, is just being younger, being a millennial, and just kind of having a different lived experience and perspective, But I feel like me, myself, and what we want to do is just kind of build off of, what Mayor Gainey has done, accessibility, being present in the community, being somebody that people could really call on and support for issues. And, there are things that we really want to build on off of that, in addition to constituent services, but criminal justice reform. We also want to push to make sure that we're able to legalize recreational adult use marijuana in Pennsylvania. So these are things that Mayor Gainey spoke of and focused on during his time in Harrisburg. And we just want to be able to kind of build off of those things and make those things happen. Primarily those two focuses, right? Just really just, criminal justice reform, especially in the districts that we live in. A lot of constituents that we have are dealing with these issues. Families are dealing with these issues. And that's something that we just want to continue to lift up and carry those banners into Harrisburg and just kind of continue on that focus. So that's, pretty much what I kind of see about that. I think the only difference is really just the perspective and just being a millennial.
Thank you. Just switching gears a bit, as we said, the April 5th primary, for those just joining us, we're on with the Democratic nominee for state representative in the 19th legislative district, Aerion Abney, for the April 5th special election, as well with the Democratic nominee in the 24th district, Martell Covington. And we talked, a bit about, the April 5th special election, and that's going to take shape in one way. And, and we talked about, you orienting yourself very early after that April 5th. But, I wanted to get a little bit more into what we alluded to a little bit in the beginning of the conversation is, this pivot, to a primary, because we began a process where there was particularly in Martell's case, a number, of candidates had planned on running in the special election, did not receive the Democratic nomination that you received, Martell, and, all of them, outside of, a candidate who was nominated by the Republican Party, Todd Koger, all decided not to run in the special election and then to seek the actual primary in May. And obviously in Aerion, in your case, the other candidate, Reverend Glenn Grayson, who also sought the nomination, also chose, like many of the other candidates in the 24th district, to kind of punt on the special election, and then to take a more, robust um, effort into the primary, which will be happening on May 17th. And just for clarity, there will be two elections in these areas. It will be the April 5th special election and then the primary. And now we're talking about the May 17th primary. So, how are you both kind of, approaching this? Because, by all accounts, it does seem like, a variety of candidates, are gearing up. And I'm sure the primary election is going to be kind of like what I'm sure you were mentally preparing for in the special election scenario, but it didn't happen. But now it's kind of like, now the contest begins, but obviously in a different light, because again, as we mentioned, be like this kind of quasi incumbent state, as you take on, that next challenge. So are you looking at this primary any different from how you may have looked at, the election, going into it? Because I know both of you were really gearing up, for a very vigorous special election campaign, and then it kind of not happened. But now knowing that, while it may be less opposition between now and April 5th, obviously the opposition is waiting for you come May 17th. We can start with Martell and then Aerion.
Yeah, I don't think it really changes our focus much. We can't take this for granted. I think that that's the most important thing that we have to remember. If you look at like a 200-meter dash, or, some people pull up in the last like 40 meters, we can't pull up in the last 40 or 60 meters. Like we have to power through the finish line. And I think that's a mentality that we both hold. Is kind of, we can't, just sit back as the person that is now the incumbent, and not grind out for those last 3.5 weeks before the primary. If anything, I think this is going to kind of motivate us, to really want to power through and really finish strong. As being somebody that was able to go to Harrisburg, meet reps, get sworn in, begin to learn about policy, maybe get committee assignments, we don't know, and then really have to hit the ground. And I think that kind of speaks to the importance of us maintaining the position in May in the primary, having somebody that is going to be able to represent the current district and then be able to transition to a new district. Is important. I think that gives us some very sound experience, and a unique perspective as well. As you just think about representatives all over the Commonwealth, and their journey to being representative. I think, me and Aerion, and there's another special election that's happening on April 5th as well. Our journey is going to be unique. And I think that's could be a testament to how real this is for us, how much we want this, and being able to really put in extra time, because there's going to be time dedicated to representative focused things. And then there's going to be time for campaigning and still having a call and still having to do fundraisers. So the grind is going to be real, and I hope that the voters will see that, and want to, make sure that we're able to stay in those positions.
Yeah, we've seen incumbents in the past who've been in office for 10 plus years run in a primary election and lose. Right? We'll be incumbents for what, 30 days? So that probably doesn't really weigh too heavily, and it is not going to impact our efforts and our energy going into the primary election. But we know, first things first. We have petitions coming up whenever they actually decide what that timeline looks like. And, I think a lot of folks don't always understand, just because somebody announces back in, 6 months before the actual, 6 to 8 months before an election that they're running for office doesn't automatically guarantee that their name is going to be on the ballot. There's actually a formal process. And there's a lot of folks, both incumbents and first time candidates, who have tried to go through that process to actually get on the ballot that don't always make it. And so, we have to, we, along with everybody else who's running for the primary, have to get through that process to even be considered to be on the ballot. And so there's steps to this process. It's not just as simple as you saying you're going to run in the primary election. And so we're just getting prepared. For us, that next phase is making sure that we have, we're staffed up, that we have enough people that can help us get the signatures that we're going to need to get on the ballot, and then we take it from there.
And both of you have alluded to the fact that the maps are going to be changing. Again, we do not know what these maps look like, but we've seen, various maps being submitted as it goes through the court. And there's going to be significant changes to both the 19th and the 24th district. For both of you, as you're going through and you're trying to put your strategy together, do you foresee any issues that you haven't talked about, or issues that you need to learn a little bit more about if the map changes to you, Aerion, and then to you, Martell?
Yeah, I think the issues, because the entirety of my district, I'm not sure if Martell's is this way too, but the entirety of my district is within the city limits proper. So there's going to be at least some high level commonalities of issues as we go throughout the different neighborhoods, even the newest neighborhood to the district, which will be the parts of the West End. But then at the same time, you have to also offset that with the fact that we'll be new to the West End. And so we have to go in there, we have to listen, we have to talk to folks, we have to, understand beyond those top level issues, around like housing and education and development and, jobs and things of that nature, like what's actually happening in the West End, like in that community, in that neighborhood, on that block, at that community center. What are the specific needs that they need there, and then figure out how to bring the appropriate resources. So it's a combination of, there's going to be some general themes that are going to cut across many of the communities, just being city neighborhoods, but then you also have to do that granular research and gain that understanding of, okay, Miss Betty, she cares about all these other high level issues, but her big thing is what's happening at the community center up the street. Like they want more programs up there, right? So how can we support that effort to provide more programs at the community center? So it's just a combination of things, going into it, knowing what we think we know, what we've been talking about throughout this campaign, but also being willing to adjust and evolve as we talk to folks and new issues pop up.
And for me, so the current map is not all city of Pittsburgh, because currently Wilkinsburg is, but the new map looks like it'll all be city of Pittsburgh. I think that majority of the concerns for constituents will remain the same. And those are things that we kind of talk about now, whether it's health and safety, making sure that, voting rights remain, supports for seniors, the environmental focus. I think a lot of the things remain the same for the new map. But like Aerion said, those nuanced issues, right, based on what part of West Oakland looks like, or what Bloomfield, what are concerns to the people in Bloomfield. They go beyond what we know on paper are concerns for voters, but what are concerns in that area. So just being able to kind of have those sit downs. And then there's also uniquely a part of the 19th district that is coming to the 24th district. So what does that look like as far as like information and resource sharing, or being a connector? What can I learn from the 19th now it's in the 24th? So it's really, like I said earlier, it's a learning time, and really just being a student. I think that's something that's important to share is, we have to be in this position and be prepared to learn a lot. And I think that will allow us to represent more effectively through this time of learning. And then also in the proposed new map, there's a lot more of eds and meds that come in, which is eds and meds is educational institutions and medical institutions, with part of Oakland coming in. So we gain a lot of hospitals. We gain some of the University of Pittsburgh. So what does that relationship look like? You know, what are these institutions able to provide to the community? What programming can we create? I think that's kind of where my mind is going now, especially with the focus about public health, which is something that, you know, this major issue for us is, you know, how can we be able to kind of connect dots with these medical institutions that are now in the district, in this community, you know, with still some of the lowest life expectancy rates in the city are still in District 24. So I just want to figure out a way for us to kind of plug that in, and really see some results and really make sure that we're, you know, supporting our constituents.
Yeah, and along somewhat along those lines, as you both know, Harrisburg, has become, a much more, polarized place, particularly over the last, year and a half, coming, into the minority. What ways are you looking, to potentially, either build relationships, across the aisle, or is there certain things that are happening from the other side of the aisle that, that concern you, that you're there to really, be a stopgap against, in other words, is there certain, issues that you potentially want to push very hard when you get there? And is there certain issues that you're very concerned with, given the current state, of Harrisburg and politics in general?
I'll jump in. So, I think the traditional textbook answer is I'm willing to work across the aisle. All right. I think that's what most people will say, and it's true. I am, but we will also be realistic that not everybody on the other side of the aisle is always wanting to work with us and willing to listen to us. And certain things become very partisan. And so, I've just learned from my experience that sometimes the moral imperative to do the right thing is not always enough for some folks to actually do it. And sometimes the economic imperative is what actually motivates and drives folks. And so, I try to enter conversations with people who may not agree with me on certain policy issues, but maybe on the other side of the aisle. When we can't convince them that it's morally the right thing to do, when things like voting rights or healthcare or stuff like that, is getting them to understand from their perspective the economic impact of either the decisions that we make in Harrisburg or the non decisions that we make when we just punt the ball and don't do anything. Right? There's a cost to all of that, and a lot of those folks who are on the other side of the aisle tend to be try to push for fiscal responsibility, and making sure that we're being good stewards of our resources. And so if we are, not investing in people on the front end because they don't necessarily want to do that, then it's going to cost us on the back end. And so getting them to really understand the economic impact of our decisions or our lack of decisions, I think is part of my thought process going into it. But then also something that concerns me, and Miracle, this working in the voting rights space, is some of the efforts from folks on the other side of the aisle who are, pushing misinformation about our elections. They're trying to undermine our elections in the past to try to, take away people's right to vote in the future, particularly people who look like us, because we're the ones who don't always vote for them, right? So it's a power grab, a way for them to continue to have power. And so I'm just concerned about some of the efforts to circumvent the legislative process, where they know they can't get a bill passed because the governor is a stopgap to push back on bad voting bills. And now they are trying to go through the avenue of doing a constitutional amendment and taking questions directly to the ballot for voters to decide. And for all the misinformation that they're putting out there, they don't want to. We're concerned that voters may interpret their narrative as being true and factual when in fact it isn't, and that could have a long-term adverse effect. So just being able to push back and create the narrative that we're providing the correct information to voters so that they're not scared about what's happening with the elections, and that if there's any things happening that shouldn't be happening. We want to make sure that we push back against that narrative so that everybody that wants to be able to vote can vote and they can feel safe and secure in that process.
All right. Yeah. So I know there was a couple parts to the question. So first, one thing that I have, talked about a lot is being a large proponent for out of school time. And there's an after school caucus that I look forward to joining and plan to join, and be able to be somebody that could be, a major advocate for the importance of out of school time. In all communities, not just in the inner city, but in rural communities as well. We really have to make sure that we're providing out of school time providers, with the pay that they deserve and supports that they need, the resources that they need, and making sure that there are safe, facilities for young people to be able to spend time in after school and on the weekends as well. The after school caucus is also a bipartisan, thing where you have, co-chairs from, all different houses and different caucuses. And I don't know what that will lead to, but, I think that that's just me showing that there's going to be some things that we have to get done. I think like one thing that Aerion said is, like you said, punting the ball and kind of prolonging certain legislation, like that endangers people. Like that endangers people's well-being, that endangers people's lives. And I think that that's something that we have to continue to ring the bell about, is, we can't play games with people's lives. Like I said, some of the lowest life expectancy rates in the city are in my district, and that's important to me. So I want to be able to kind of go and push for some things to get done because lives are legit at stake. And things that concern me. We deal with some issues where, the other party, will not vote on things or not pull things out of committee. And, we understand these things happen, and that's why amendments are super important. But things that do concern me, to just be honest, I feel like a lot of times in Pennsylvania, there's kind of copycats from states like Texas and states like Georgia and Florida. We saw that through the pandemic with some of the things regarding like mask mandates and things like that, or even some of the voting things. So what concerns me right now is a push for some legislation to reduce, to address or attack reproductive rights, and also some anti-trans legislation. I feel like people are going to try to push. Those things concern me, and we'll say it again. That's why it's important that we have a Democratic governor. To make sure that those things don't happen. But just kind of seeing what's happening in those other states, I think that those are the things that kind of concern me, is some legislation that we might see brought about. But once again, it's important to have a Democratic governor, to make sure that those things aren't voted into law.
And that kind of rolls right into my next question. We saw last year a lot of the people who won some of the races kind of created a slate, kind of partnered up, and people were running together, across state. It is, like we said, the election year of Pennsylvania. All eyes are on Pennsylvania. Have either of you began to create slates and committees with other candidates? And if so, are you able to disclose like what those are and who are some of the other people that you're endorsing in races across Pennsylvania, you Martell and you Aerion?
So not so much any endorsements right now. Just really trying to make sure that we're focused here. But I have made sure that we've met with some other reps that are running in the area, like Mandy Steele, and other people, really just trying to make sure that we know who's running with us. So not really wanting to endorse or throw major support behind anybody, but I have met with, congressional candidates that are running for rep, for other state rep in other districts as well. But really just making sure that there's a support. I think primarily we try to support each other as candidates, because that's something that we all have in common right now, is like we're putting our life under the microscope. We're making people are able to kind of put our lives through cheese graters and talk about this or talk about that, and we're all dealing with that at the same time, right? So I think that that's one thing that I've tried to do, is just kind of beyond a candidate thing. Is just like make sure that the person is running is all right, like making sure that people are eating, what I mean, things like that. So support really kind of beyond a candidate, but like support for the person that's running for that office, I think is really kind of where, I've been at as far as supports for other people that are running.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, okay. So similar here, we haven't endorsed any campaigns. We've gotten several endorsements, which we're really grateful for. But we've kind of been so focused, as we talked about earlier. We've got a big task on our hands, having two elections within 45 days of each other. That we've been really focused on this. And so but I say I'm willing and ready to work with whoever wins their election, from school board all the way up to president. No matter what election it is, my job is to understand that all levels of government play an important role, and it's great when all levels of government are functioning together. So no matter who wins, what election, whether our districts overlap in some capacity or they don't, I'm ready to get to work with them, including Martell, because as he mentioned, our districts are really, we actually are going to be splitting the Hill District up, which is the first time I think in a long time the Hill District has been split between two state reps, and so that's going to be important that he and I are on the same page and we're communicating and we're being we're being advocates for our districts.
Thank you for that. And those who are just joining us, we are here with Aerion Abney, the Democratic nominee in the 19th Legislative District in the April 5th special election, and his counterpart in the 24th Legislative District, Martell Covington, the Democratic nominee as well in that special election, which will also be held on April 5th. My next question kind of is along the lines of what you both have been talking about a little bit about, representing the city, districts bordering. Are there any particular ways that you are planning to be an asset to the new administration in City Hall? Ways you can support through ushering state funding or other programs. Is there anything that, being that both of you, represents huge parts of the city, and if you're both lucky enough to win the primaries as well, you will be, representing new districts that both, I believe, are, fully within in the city. Are there any specific ways you're looking to use your position as a way to help support not only the city administration, but to help move the city forward as a whole?
I'll start it. I'm willing to help however we can. Whether that looks like some kind of like collaborative efforts or programming, or any kind of things that will support parts of the city. I really want to come in and just be a help. You know what I mean? Be somebody that's a bridge. Whether we're able to kind of share concerns or share informations, or a lot of times offices will get calls about issues that we may not be able to directly impact. So how can we get those calls and get those concerns from constituents, and how can we make sure that gets downtown and those things get done? How can we team up together? I think right now one thing that we're probably going to be working on together is some of like lead line replacements, making sure that those things are happening. Some sewer mains that are being changed in some parts of the city. Just making sure that we can kind of stand together on that and making sure that work is being done properly, safely, and making sure that constituents aren't losing service, flow of service, whatever that may look like, whatever the utility is. So I know that's one thing that we'll definitely try to work together on is just kind of the issues, the runoff and sewer issues that are happening in East Hills and Homewood and parts of Wilkinsburg and parts of Lincoln. So I know that's one thing that we'll definitely be working on together. And I'm sure some other things will come up. Like I said, I know there's going to be a focus on, how can we make sure that safety, that we increase safety out here, especially with the spring and summer months happening. How can we make sure that we're having, a safe spring and safe summers? So I think that those are definitely ways we'll be able to work together. And, whatever else may arise, we want to make sure that we can really support the new mayor, new administration, and make sure, like you said, we're moving this city forward, however that may look.
Yeah, I'm 100% in support of the new mayor and administration, and want to be as helpful as I possibly can, from my position. Um, we're fortunate that both the mayor and the chief of staff, are familiar with Harrisburg, so they can definitely give us some guidance on where the levers are up in Harrisburg to pull to bring the right resources, back to the community. I think about things like, development. We know Pittsburgh is a city that's going through transition when it comes to development, whether it's it's housing, whether it's housing development or it's a commercial development or things of that nature. A lot of times there's tax credits that come from Harrisburg, or there's things that get approved from Harrisburg from the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency, to bring resources back. So I want to be able to do that. But then also, I think at a granular level, I would really love to see my staff and myself have sort of consistent, regular meetings with like city council staff, like the districts that overlap, so that they know what's going on at the state level, we know what's going on at the city level, and our staffs are communicating. I know that sometimes that doesn't always happen, but if we can set up regularly scheduled meetings where, they're all talking and we're not working in silos, so that we can know how to best go to Harrisburg to advocate for what they need here in the city of Pittsburgh. I think that will be beneficial to not just our success as elected officials, but I think it's going to be beneficial for the city as a whole.
Perfect. Well, I want to thank both of you gentlemen for spending your Monday nights with us. Good luck to you in your campaign. We hope to hear back from you after April 5th. And again, thank you both.
Thanks
And
for
we also want
having
to
Thanks
thank
for
us.
your
having me.
families for sharing you with us, as well. So yes, thank you
No
so much.
doubt.
Thank you.
And so, like we said, it's a very busy electoral season and campaign season. And we mentioned at the top of the hour that we are still waiting on maps. And one of the reasons why it's very important to talk about the maps is here at the One High Power Hour, we put out, the scorecards, we engage, we have forms. But one of the things we do, we only engage legitimate candidates, people who are on the ballot, people who are running, people who said that they're willing to come onto the platform and the program and speak with us and our constituents. If people are not on the ballot, there are people we're not going to be able to have a conversation with. People are not going to be able to do the scorecards. In addition, for people who are running independent, third party, those candidates are not eligible to engage in the primary election because they are not a part of the major parties per the election rules of Pennsylvania. So they will not be included until the general election. We know that some candidates have said, we're running just to run, we're not going to win. We probably are going to figure out how to engage those candidates. We know that a lot of people care about what's going on in Pennsylvania and are trying to figure out how they can best serve Pennsylvania. But per the rules, people have to collect signatures, people have to be on the ballot, people have to live in certain jurisdictions, people are able to move. The congressional rules are not the same as the legislative rules, which are not the same as the city council, school board rules. So we want to make sure that we are being like open and honest and transparent when we reach out to people. We're also, as a Black-led organization, really not trying to platform people who espouse white supremacist viewpoints and ideals, right? And people who espouse anti-Black sentiments. So again, as we're trying to do the best to bring you recent information and bring you the candidates, help you get to know the candidates, we do have some boundaries for the people that we engage with, but we want to make sure we are being clear because we are going to launch our candidate forum series starting next week. So please make sure if you're working for a candidate, you're responding to your emails. We invite people from all parties and platforms to come and talk with us and engage with us. So again, check your spam, check your junk email. I know sometimes my name personally gets like flagged for spam. So we are trying to like reach out to people. So again, Kahari is going to talk a little more about who we have next week. I know something you all been waiting for, but please just make sure that you're engaging with us. If you're a candidate, make sure you have a candidate email on your website, on your Facebook, an address or somewhere we can get in contact with you, because we are reaching out not only to invite for forums, but also to send out the scorecards. And I know Kari wants to talk a little more about that.
Yeah. So next Monday we will have candidates running in the 12th congressional district, which is formerly, I believe, the 17th or 18th legislative district. I was represented by Mike Doyle, and we are still finalizing confirmations and timing. The timing may work a little bit different because there's a couple of events going on that night, as well as that's the last night of petitioning for congressional candidates. So there is a little bit of of um, of scheduling jujitsu that we're doing to make it happen. But we have been in touch with 3 of the 4 campaigns up to this point, and I'm sure, excuse me, we'll be in touch with the 4th campaign as well in the very, very near future. So stay tuned for promotions that'll begin in the next day or two. And we're just finalizing just some scheduling stuff because we want to just make sure that we can have everyone on, and folks aren't like scrambling, trying to do it from their phone in the car and stuff like that. So just a little bit more logistics we have to do behind the scenes before we can give the full-throated announcement. But we are in deep in discussions of having the 12th district congressional candidates, and that would be Jerry Dickinson, Summer Lee, Steve Irwin, Bhavini Patel, which is a very, very, very esteemed group of people that we're very much excited about having that conversation with. But we do have to work out a couple things behind the scenes. We do want to thank the campaigns for their quick response, as we've have been all dealing with delays of redistricting and not necessarily knowing who's running where and what's happening. So really want to appreciate the campaigns and their staff for being so responsive.
And so, with that, we want to thank you all so much for tuning in. If you're watching us on YouTube, or if you have a YouTube, please make sure you're subscribing to our YouTube channel. We have a lot of great content coming for you in the next couple of weeks. Again, please make sure you double check your registration. Like we said, the maps are changing. That also may mean your polling place is going to change, particularly for those in the 19th and the 24th. You want to double check your polling for April 5th and your polling for May 17th, because as districts change, again, your polling places may change, and you want to make sure you are familiar with where you are going to vote. And with that, we hope you have a great rest of your week. Tomorrow, for What Black Pittsburgh Needs to Know, we'll be sitting down with James Harris, who is the new director of the Black Equity Coalition, and just talk about some of the issues that people are pushing within Allegheny County, issues that particularly impact Black people's health, mobility, and economic situations. And it's been a really great conversation, so make sure you are tuned in. And with that, I'm Miracle Jones with my co-host Kahari Mosley. I hope you have a great evening. Bye.